Arizona is a land of vast deserts, ancient ruins, hidden caves, and stories that continue to echo through time. Across its rugged canyons and towering mountains, entire civilizations once thrived, building remarkable structures before disappearing in ways that still puzzle historians today. From cliff dwellings carved into sheer rock walls to long-abandoned settlements buried deep in the desert, Arizona remains one of the most mysterious places in America, where history, legend, and silence still exist side by side. Antelope House Ruin. Deep within the towering stone walls of Canyon de Chelly National Monument, hidden beneath massive cliffs and surrounded by silence, lies one of the most fascinating ancient sites in the American Southwest. From a distance, it almost disappears into the canyon itself. The ruins blend so naturally into the sandstone walls that many visitors fail to notice them at first glance. This is Antelope House Ruin. And unlike many ancient places that feel empty or abandoned, this site still carries a strange sense of presence, as though the canyon somehow remembers the people who once lived there. The canyon itself feels enormous. Red sandstone cliffs rise high into the sky, casting long, moving shadows across the ground throughout the day. The deeper you travel into Canyon de Chelly, the quieter everything becomes. Modern roads vanish behind you. Cell phone signals begin fading away. Even the air feels different inside the canyon. Dry, still, and filled with drifting dust and the distant sound of wind echoing against stone walls. And then, suddenly, you see it. Ancient rooms tucked beneath a cliff overhang. Carefully stacked stone walls built by human hands centuries ago. Narrow doorways. Dark openings where entire families once spent their lives. Antelope House was built by the ancestral Puebloan people, sometimes called the Ancient Puebloans, or Anasazi, though many modern indigenous communities prefer the term Ancestral Puebloan. Historians believe the settlement was occupied during the 1200s, and possibly even earlier. At its height, dozens of people may have lived there. The name Antelope House came much later. Navajo guides noticed ancient antelope paintings along the cliff walls near the ruins, and eventually the name remained. Even today, those faded images can still be seen. And honestly, that detail changes the feeling of the site completely. The ruins stop feeling like random stones, and suddenly begin feeling personal. You start imagining the people who painted those animals, and wondering what they meant. Were they connected to hunting? Spiritual beliefs? Ceremonies? Clan symbols? Nobody truly knows. And that uncertainty seems to surround nearly every part of the site. One of the most fascinating things about Antelope House is how advanced the settlement actually was. From below, the ruins may appear simple, but archaeologists discovered multiple living spaces, storage rooms, gathering areas, and carefully organized structures. Wooden beams once supported roofs and upper sections. Families stored food supplies for difficult seasons. Daily life inside the canyon was clearly organized with long-term survival in mind. And they built all of this in an environment that could become extremely dangerous. Canyon de Chelly is breathtakingly beautiful, but it is not forgiving. Summer temperatures inside the canyon can become brutal. Flash floods sometimes rush through the canyon floor with little warning. Winter nights can turn bitterly cold. Climbing steep canyon walls would have been exhausting and risky. Yet people remained here for generations. That alone suggests the canyon offered something incredibly valuable. Protection was likely one reason. The cliffs created natural defensive barriers against enemies. The overhang shielded homes from harsh weather. Nearby water sources allowed farming along the canyon floor, while families lived safely above ground level. But there is another reason places like Antelope House feel so mysterious. isolation. Even today, reaching the ruins takes effort. Visitors usually need guided tours to access deeper sections of Canyon de Chelly, because the land remains part of the Navajo Nation. That protection has helped preserve the canyon from heavy destruction and uncontrolled tourism. And honestly, I think that makes the experience even more powerful. Some historic sites lose their atmosphere once crowds and commercialization take over. But Antelope House still feels remote, still quiet, still deeply connected to the landscape surrounding it. When sunlight touches the canyon walls during late afternoon, the entire place glows with deep shades of orange and red. Shadows stretch slowly across the ruins. Birds circle high above the cliffs. And for a moment, it becomes surprisingly easy to imagine ancient life continuing there, exactly as it once did.
Cooking fires burning beneath the overhang, children moving between rooms, voices echoing softly against the canyon walls. It almost feels as though the canyon traps the past inside itself. But like many cliff dwellings throughout the Southwest, Antelope House was eventually abandoned. And once again, historians cannot fully agree on why. Some researchers believe long droughts damaged farming conditions across the region. Others think conflicts between communities increased over time. There may have been shortages of resources, changing migration patterns, or broader social shifts happening throughout the Southwest. Personally, I think abandonment stories are often more emotional than people realize. Imagine leaving behind the place where your family lived for generations, a home built into stone, connected to memory, survival, tradition, and identity. People do not usually walk away from places like that without serious reasons. And yet, that is exactly what happened. By the late 1200s and early 1300s, many cliff dwellings across the Southwest stood empty. The people moved on. The canyon remained.
One thing that makes Antelope House especially interesting is how human it feels compared to larger and more famous ruins. Some ancient sites seem so enormous or ceremonial that they feel distant from ordinary life. But here, daily routines feel easier to imagine. The rooms are relatively small. The spaces feel personal. The walls still carry signs of careful work done by individuals rather than massive empires. You begin thinking less about ancient civilizations and more about real people. Parents, artists, farmers, children, families trying to survive inside the canyon. That human connection makes the mystery feel even stronger because it reminds you these were real lives, not simply stories from history books. The site also contains evidence of trade and communication with other cultures throughout the Southwest. Pottery styles, tools, and materials discovered in the canyon suggest that the people living here were connected to distant communities long before modern roads existed. That surprises many visitors. There is often an assumption that ancient desert settlements were isolated or primitive, but places like Antelope House prove the opposite.
The people who lived here understood farming, survival, architecture, and regional trade at a remarkably advanced level. They adapted to one of the harshest environments in North America and created communities that survived for generations. And somehow, despite all that knowledge and experience, the settlements still faded away. Today, the condition of Antelope House is both impressive and fragile. Arizona's dry climate helped preserve sections of the ruins remarkably well. Some walls still stand strong after centuries beneath the canyon overhang. But erosion never completely stops. Wind, temperature changes, and time slowly wear the structures down year after year. Thankfully, access remains carefully controlled. The Navajo Nation and the National Park Service continue working together to protect Canyon de Chelly and preserve the ruins from vandalism and over-tourism. Visitors are encouraged to respect the land because for many Navajo families, this canyon is not simply a tourist destination. It is sacred ground.
And honestly, once you experience the canyon in person, That respect feels completely natural. There is a deep stillness there that is difficult to explain properly. Not frightening, exactly. More like the feeling that the canyon remembers things. For centuries, these cliffs have witnessed human lives passing through them. Ancestral Puebloan communities, Navajo families, Spanish explorers, American soldiers. And through all of it, the canyon walls remained standing. One of the darker chapters in Canyon de Chelly's history came during the 1800s, when military campaigns forced Navajo people from the region during the tragic Long Walk. Long after the ancient cliff dwellings were abandoned, the canyon witnessed suffering once again. That history adds another emotional layer to the landscape. It reminds you that this place has never been merely scenery. It has always been connected to human survival. If you visit Antelope House today, the experience depends heavily on timing. During busy tourist seasons, guided groups move through parts of the canyon regularly. But early in the morning or later in the evening, the silence becomes almost overwhelming. You hear footsteps against sand, wind brushing stone, distant birds echoing high above the cliffs.
Montezuma Castle National Monument. If you drive through central Arizona long enough, the landscape slowly begins to transform. Cities fade into the distance, gas stations become harder to find. The highways stretch across dry, endless land where heat shimmers above the desert floor like waves rising from the earth itself. And then, almost without warning, you arrive at a place that feels impossible. High above the desert floor, built directly into a limestone cliff, stands Montezuma Castle. The first thing most people notice is how unreal it looks. The structure sits inside a natural alcove nearly 100 feet above the ground, blending so perfectly into the rock that from far away, it almost disappears into the cliff face. But once your eyes adjust, the details become clear. Windows, rooms, doorways, the shape of an entire community carefully built into stone. Naturally, one question immediately comes to mind. Why would anyone choose to live up there? For many years, early settlers wrongly believed the site was connected to the Aztecs. That misunderstanding is actually where the name Montezuma Castle came from. In reality, the structure was built by the Sinagua people, an indigenous culture that lived throughout this region nearly 1,000 years ago.
Ironically, the name Sinagua means without water, even though the area around the monument contains reliable springs and streams. Nearby Beaver Creek still cuts through the Arizona desert today, like a ribbon of green life surrounded by dry earth. The Sinagua were highly skilled farmers and builders. They grew corn, beans, and squash despite the harsh desert climate, and they traded with cultures across the Southwest. Archaeologists have discovered shells from the Gulf of California and copper bells from Mexico, proof that these communities were connected to a much larger world than many people imagine. Still, Montezuma Castle remains the most mysterious thing they left behind. The structure contains around 20 rooms and may once have housed several dozen people. Even by modern standards, the design feels surprisingly advanced. Limestone blocks and mud plaster formed the walls, while heavy wooden beams supported floors and ceilings. The rooms were positioned to stay cooler during brutal summers and warmer during cold desert winters.
What makes the site even more remarkable is its condition. Most ancient structures exposed to the elements slowly collapse over time, but Montezuma Castle survived because the natural cliff overhang protected it from rain, direct sunlight, and severe weather. The alcove acted almost like nature's own shelter. Standing below it today, it is easy to imagine daily life unfolding inside those rooms. Smoke drifting from cooking fires, children climbing wooden ladders, families sleeping in cool, shaded spaces while desert winds moved quietly through the canyon below. But one question never completely disappears. Why was it abandoned? Around the early 1400s, the Sinagua people left Montezuma Castle behind. Archaeologists found no signs of massive warfare or sudden destruction. The people simply moved away. Some researchers believe long periods of drought made survival increasingly difficult. Others think shifting trade routes, migration patterns, or tensions with neighboring groups slowly pushed communities elsewhere. The truth is that nobody knows for certain.
And honestly, that uncertainty is part of what gives the place its strange atmosphere. When you stand beneath the cliff and stare at those empty windows, it feels less like looking at ruins and more like witnessing a frozen moment in time, as if the people who lived there stepped outside one day and never returned. The landscape around the monument only deepens that feeling. The desert carries an eerie kind of silence. Birds echo against canyon walls. Wind moves softly through the trees near the creek. During summer, the heat becomes intense enough to exhaust visitors after only a short walk. You quickly understand why ancient communities carefully chose shaded, protected places to survive. One of the most fascinating things about Montezuma Castle is how hidden it actually is. From a distance, travelers moving through the valley may not have noticed it at all. The structure blends naturally into the colors of the cliff itself, which is one reason historians believe protection played a major role in choosing the location. Still, life there could not have been easy. Imagine hauling water, firewood, food, and supplies up wooden ladders every single day. Imagine children climbing those heights, or families moving through darkness during storms. And yet, the Sinagua remained there for generations. That alone says something important. Whatever advantages the cliff provided clearly outweighed the danger and effort required to live there. Today, visitors are no longer allowed to enter the structure itself. Years ago, heavy tourism began damaging the ruins, so access was restricted to help preserve the site. People now view the dwelling from below, along a paved walking trail. Honestly, that decision was probably necessary. Ancient places like this can only survive so much human contact before they slowly begin disappearing, piece by piece. Even from the ground, though, the experience is powerful. The walls still stand. The windows still overlook the valley. Wooden beams placed by human hands nearly 1,000 years ago are still visible today. And maybe that is what makes Montezuma Castle feel different from many other ancient ruins. It does not feel destroyed. It feels preserved.
Many visitors describe an unusual silence there. Not fear exactly, but the feeling that the place still belongs to someone else. Indigenous tribes connected to the region continue to consider the site sacred, and once you see it in person, that respect becomes easy to understand. Because this was never just stone and wood. It was once a living home. Not far away lies another important site called Montezuma Well, a deep natural sinkhole filled with water. Centuries ago, the Sinagua built irrigation canals connected to it, and remarkably, some of those ancient waterways still carry water today. That alone is incredible to think about. Systems engineered hundreds of years ago continue functioning in the modern world, while the people who created them slowly disappeared into history. Over time, many theories have emerged about what happened to the Sinagua. Some believe environmental changes forced communities to relocate. Others think their culture gradually blended into neighboring indigenous groups, until the Sinagua identity itself faded away.
There are even paranormal legends tied to the ruins, especially from visitors arriving near sunset. Personally, though, the real mystery feels more human than supernatural. Civilizations do not always collapse in dramatic ways.
Sometimes life simply becomes harder, little by little. Water sources shift, crops fail, trade weakens, communities move elsewhere. And eventually, an entire culture quietly disappears into the next generation until only traces remain behind. Maybe that idea feels unsettling because it reminds us how temporary everything truly is. The walls remain, the ladders remain, empty rooms remain, but the people are gone. One thing that surprised many historians is how sophisticated the Sinagua culture actually was. Popular history often portrays ancient desert societies as isolated or primitive, yet Montezuma Castle proves the opposite. These were intelligent planners who deeply understood engineering, architecture, farming, and climate. Even the location itself shows careful design. The cliff faces south, helping capture sunlight during colder months. The overhang protects against rain. Beaver Creek provides nearby water. Nothing about the site was random. Everything served a purpose.
Today, visiting the monument is far easier than it once was. Maintained trails, visitor centers, shaded rest areas, and educational displays make the area accessible while still preserving its quiet atmosphere. Thankfully, the National Park Service has managed to protect the site without turning it into an overly commercial tourist attraction. Of course, modern tourism still brings challenges. Crowds grow during busy seasons, Arizona's summer heat can become dangerous for unprepared visitors, and like many ancient landmarks around the world, there is always the risk that too much attention could eventually damage what time managed to preserve. Still, compared to many archaeological sites, Montezuma Castle remains in extraordinary condition. And honestly, part of the reason may be the desert itself. Arizona's dry climate preserves wood and stone far better than wetter environments. In another part of the world, this structure might have collapsed centuries ago. Instead, it continues standing silently above the valley below. There is something deeply humbling about that.
Casa Grande Ruins National Monument. Deep in the Arizona desert, surrounded by dry earth, towering cactus fields, and long, empty highways, stands one of the most mysterious ancient structures in the American Southwest. At first glance, it almost feels unreal, like something that should not exist in such an unforgiving landscape. Massive walls rise directly from the desert floor, resembling the remains of a forgotten fortress abandoned centuries ago. The color of the structure blends naturally into the land around it, almost as if it slowly emerged from the earth itself over hundreds of years. This is Casa Grande Ruins National Monument. And even today, historians still debate exactly why it was built. The name Casa Grande means great house in Spanish. Early European explorers gave it that name because the structure looked unlike anything else they had ever seen in the region. Rising several stories high and built entirely from adobe, it stood alone in the desert, as though it belonged to another world. The first thing most visitors notice is its size. Photographs rarely capture the feeling properly. Standing near the ruins in person feels completely different. The walls are thick, towering, and surprisingly massive. Even after centuries of heat, storms, erosion, and exposure, much of the structure still survives. That alone is remarkable.
Adobe is made from mud, clay, water, and natural plant material. In many climates, buildings made from adobe slowly crumble back into the earth over time. But Arizona's dry desert air helped preserve Casa Grande for centuries. The people who built it were part of the Hohokam civilization, one of the most advanced ancient cultures in the Southwest. The Hohokam lived throughout southern Arizona for hundreds of years and became famous for something that still amazes archaeologists today: their irrigation canals. Long before modern machinery existed, the Hohokam engineered hundreds of miles of canals across the desert.
Some were so large that several people could stand inside them at once. These waterways carried river water into farming communities, allowing crops to grow in land that otherwise seemed impossible for agriculture. And honestly, when you stand in Arizona today beneath that dry, relentless heat, it becomes easier to understand how extraordinary that achievement truly was. The Hohokam were not merely surviving in the desert. They were engineering an entire civilization within it.
Casa Grande may once have stood at the center of something much larger. Archaeologists believe the surrounding area contained homes, courtyards, storage rooms, workshops, and gathering spaces connected to a thriving community. But the great house itself remains the biggest mystery. Why was it built? Some researchers believe the structure had astronomical purposes. Certain windows and doorways appear aligned with the movements of the sun and moon during important times of the year. During solstices and seasonal events, sunlight enters parts of the building in precise ways. That has led many historians to believe Casa Grande may have helped track seasons, farming cycles, or ceremonial dates. Others believe the structure served as a ceremonial center, a gathering place for rituals, leadership meetings, or important social events. There are also theories suggesting it functioned as a trade hub, storage facility, or even a defensive lookout. The truth is probably a mixture of many purposes, but nobody knows for certain. And that uncertainty still hangs over the ruins today.
One of the strangest things about Casa Grande is its isolation. The structure stands alone in a wide-open desert valley. Mountains rise far away in the distance, but otherwise the landscape feels exposed, quiet, and empty. When wind moves across the desert floor, the sound echoes strangely through the site, creating an atmosphere that feels almost hollow. It is easy to imagine ancient travelers spotting the great house from miles away while crossing the valley under the Arizona sun. And centuries ago, the structure must have looked even more impressive than it does today. Now the walls appear weathered and worn by time, but long ago the surfaces would have been smoother, brighter, and possibly coated with plaster. Wooden beams stretched across upper levels. Fires burned nearby. Farmers moved through canal fields surrounding the settlement. The place was alive once. That is something people sometimes forget when visiting ancient ruins. To the people who lived there, this was not some mysterious monument from the past. It was simply part of everyday life.
Children probably played beside those walls. Families cooked meals nearby. Workers repaired canals beneath the desert heat. Leaders gathered in shaded rooms while dust storms swept across the valley outside. And then, sometime around the 1400s, everything began to change. The Hohokam civilization slowly disappeared from the region. That mystery still sparks debate among historians today. Some researchers believe severe drought damaged farming systems beyond recovery. Others think destructive flooding may have ruined sections of the canal network. There are also theories involving disease, conflict, social unrest, or migration. Personally, I think people often expect ancient mysteries to end dramatically. But real history is usually quieter than that. Communities struggle little by little. Resources become harder to manage. Water sources shift. Trade weakens. Families relocate elsewhere. Over time, entire cultures can slowly fade away while the buildings remain behind. Still, standing near Casa Grande creates a strange emotional feeling because the structure feels too significant to simply abandon. Even today, it dominates the landscape. You cannot help wondering what happened during its final years. Did the last families leave reluctantly? Did they hope to return one day? Or had the great house already become ancient, even to the people who eventually walked away from it? One thing that makes Casa Grande especially important is its role in American preservation history. It became the first archaeological site in the United States officially protected by the federal government. Even during the late 1800s, people recognized that the ruins were historically valuable.
Unfortunately, looters had already damaged parts of the site while searching for artifacts and buried treasures. Thankfully, preservation efforts eventually stopped much of the destruction. Today, a massive protective roof covers the Great House to shield it from rain and weather damage. Some visitors find that modern canopy surprising at first. Seeing an ancient adobe structure protected beneath a huge metal shelter creates a strange contrast between the ancient world and the modern one. But honestly, without that protection, the building might not survive much longer. Adobe is durable in dry climates, but time eventually wears down everything.
The visitor area today is carefully maintained. There are walking paths, shaded seating areas, museum exhibits, and educational displays explaining Hohokam history and engineering. Rangers help visitors understand how the canal systems transformed the desert into productive farmland. Yet even with those modern additions nearby, the atmosphere surrounding the ruins still feels powerful, especially during quieter hours of the day. Early mornings and sunsets feel particularly unforgettable. When crowds disappear, the desert becomes almost completely silent. Birds move through the cactus fields. Wind drifts across dry earth. The ancient adobe walls glow orange beneath fading sunlight. And during those moments, Casa Grande feels less like a tourist attraction and more like a surviving memory from another age. There are also many legends connected to the ruins. Some visitors claim the site carries spiritual energy. Others describe strange feelings while standing near the Great House after dark. Stories about unexplained lights and unusual sounds have circulated around the area for decades. Personally, though, I do not think Casa Grande needs paranormal stories to feel fascinating.
The real mystery is already extraordinary enough. An advanced desert civilization built one of the largest adobe structures in North America centuries ago. They engineered enormous canal systems across land that seemed impossible to farm. They created thriving communities beneath brutal desert heat. And somehow, that entire world slowly disappeared. That alone is incredible. The condition of the site today is actually better than many ancient ruins across the Southwest. Preservation teams continue carefully monitoring the walls, and visitors are no longer allowed inside the structure itself in order to reduce damage. The surrounding grounds remain clean, protected, and accessible. Still, Arizona's climate continues creating challenges. Summer temperatures regularly become dangerous. Even modern visitors carrying water and protective clothing can feel overwhelmed by the heat. During peak afternoons, the ground itself seems to radiate warmth upward into the air. It makes you think about what daily life must have been like for the Hohokam people working beneath that same desert sun centuries ago. And somehow, they adapted. That may be the most impressive part of Casa Grande.